Creating tests for complex forms can be a very hard and challenging job, but hopefully we will change that today. I will share with you all the tools and techniques I like to use in my forms in order to create good tests. What I mean by good tests? A good test is not only to go to this form, clicking next and checking that we have, for example, 3 required fields. I'm also talking about the code we use inside our tests, because as the code we have in our application might change, the code in our tests also might change in the future. If we have another field, or if we want to change the validation for the first name, our code in the tests need to be written in a way that's understandable by ourselves in a year's time, or even better, by our colleagues in 1 year or 2 years from now. So I will pay attention during this video on how to make our tests in a way that's easy for others to understand what we are testing. Now, let me show you the form I created for today's video. I have a multi-step form with 3 steps, and the first field will be our first name. I will put my name, Bruno. If I put a name bigger than mine, we will have validation error saying that the field can't be longer than 5 characters. Then I need to select my job situation, which at the moment I'm a full-time employee. And then in the city, we are validating between 8 and 11 characters. One city that is in those requirements is Vila Real in Portugal. So I will use that city. Then this checkbox is a very nice one. It doesn't have a validation on itself directly here, but if I click on that one and I go to the next step, you can see that over here it's asking me all the money I have. If I click next, it will say, because you said you are a millionaire, you need to have at least $1 million. So I will say that I have $1 million. Now I'm able to move forward to the last step. And in this description, there is no validation, but I will just say hello, for example. Clicking on submit, we will see on our console all the fields that we created before. So with this in mind, you can now understand already 2 possible tests that we will do. The required field ones, and also this test where we usually call the happy path, where we put everything that meets our validations and we submit the form. That last one is usually the first test you should do in your applications. And if you don't have time for anything else, at least that test you should have to make sure that everything works. Then, when you have time, you should start to add tests for those required fields and then go one by one in those fields and start to test, for example, that the first name has a required validation and at most 5 characters. Go to the city and check the city is only between 8 and 11 characters. After you clone my repository, I want you to focus on 2 files. The first one is the component implementation, in case you want to have a look, and the second one is the testing files, where we are going to spend the majority of this video on. And the first test will be on submit is called when all the fields pass validation. So the first field that we have will be this first name. And as I said before, we will just type, for example, Bruno. So how can we grab that first name field? Well, if you have never used React testing library, let's inspect the HTML, check where I have that input field. And now the only thing we need to do is check where we have the label and then go one level above the label. So I will do edit as HTML, copy all of that code, and now I will go to a website which is a playground from React testing library. I will go ahead, delete all of that code at the top left and paste all my HTML. Now I can click on my input field, and over here you can see the query, the preferred query. You have other options here at the bottom right that you can use, but this one is the preferred one. So we will copy that one. Now I will just do const first name equals to that one, and we just need to import the screen from React testing library. Now we need to type into this input field the name Bruno, and there are 2 ways to do this. The first one is using the fire event from React testing library, but as you can see on the screen, is a bit painful, isn't it? So there is a nicer way to do that. We can import another package from React testing library as well, which is called the testing library/user event. And the way we do it with that one will be the following: user.type first name, and then we will type Bruno like that. Now, you might start to say, hey, Bruno, we have, I don't know, 8, 9 fields in our form. So if we have all those fields and then I will have roughly 3, 4 lines per field, this test will start to become gigantic, right? Yes, you are absolutely right. So usually something I do to facilitate my colleagues to understand my tests is the following. I will do this function get first name return, and I will just put that code over there. So now what we need to do actually is just the following. User.type get first name Bruno, and we will do the same for the next field. So as you can see, our tests become much easier to read and to understand in the future in case we want to change them. Now, the next field will be our dropdown. And this dropdown, if you inspect this one, will be a normal select. And if you don't know how to do this, you can once again go to the React testing library playground and put it over there. But I will already tell you what's the best way to do that. So we will do the following. Const dropdown equals to screen.get by role, and the role of the selects is called the combo box. So we will do combo box, and now I will do name, and we have the following job situation. So I will do this job situation, and I'm passing a regular expression like over here, and this just means that even if someone types it like that, it will still work, okay? So it's case invariant. It can be with any casing as long as job situation is over there, we are good to go. And now we need to go inside our user event documentation because the way you can change the dropdown is a little bit weird. So I will do the following. Select options. Over here in the first position, I will pass the drop-down itself, and in the second one, we will pass the option we want to click on. So I will do the following. Within our drop-down dot get by role, I will get the option, and the name of the option that I want will be the full time, right? And now what is going to happen is that we are going to select that option. That option will now be selected, and the next field will be very similar to this first field. In a little bit, I will do the same to the drop-down we did for the get first name, okay? Now, the next field, it will be very similar. I will do the city equals to screen.get by role, text box, name, and I will do city, okay? And now we will once again do exactly the same thing. User.type, I will do the city, and I will do Vila Real like we did before. Now, the only thing we need to do is to click on our checkbox and then click on next. So let's do the following. Const checkbox equals to screen.get by role. The role will be a checkbox, and we need to copy the label because I'm not sure about the label is I am a millionaire. So let's copy that label, and I will say it's also invariant. So if someone changes the casing, we are good with it, and we will do user.click on the checkbox. Checkbox. At this stage, we have the first page completely accepted, and the first page is ready to go, and we can click on next. So I will now click next, and we do it the following way. User.click, screen.get by role, we will get a button, and name will be next, invariant, right? So at this stage, we clicked on the next. Now, there is a small caveat over here. I will select full-time, I will select the city as Vila Real, I will say I'm a millionaire, and now when I click next, this is not a synchronous operation. In terms of formik, this will be an asynchronous operation because we are moving from one step to the other using a post from the form, right? So the form is posting on itself and it's doing validation. And because that validation is happening over there, we need to wait for this element to be on the screen. right? And you have two ways to wait for it. You can use a wait for and inside do expect this field to be in the document, or you can use the find by role. And that's what we are going to use. We will use the find by role. And then we will just do the following. Const, I will say the money, which is the name of that input field, and we will do the following. Await screen dot find by role, and we will do text box name all the money I have over here, and this has a bug over here. So the bug over here is because I'm using a text box, but the input fields that have the type number, they are not a text box. So let me just copy this for you, and we will do the exact same thing we did before. I will copy the container parent, copy this one, paste it over here, and when I select that one, you can see that the input fields that have the type number, they will be of type spin button, okay? So if you are using text box and this is not working, that's the reason. Let's now change this one to be a spin button, and as you can see, React testing library even has autocompletes for us. And now we have the money over there. So we can do user.type on the money. I will type 1 million, 123, 123. So now I have 1 million pounds over there. And the last thing we need to do is something very similar to what we did for our second step. And we will do for the third step something very, very similar. So I can even copy this code over there, and instead of being a spin button is again a text box, and it will be our description, okay? And I will call it description, and like we did before, I will just say on the description, hello again. All right, so at this stage, the only thing we need to do is to click on our submit button, and in this case it will be called submit button. And after we click on the submit button, we need to expect that our onSubmit have been called. So let's do that. Let's do await, wait for, submit, expect onSubmit to have been called ×1. And I always like to then do expect onSubmit to have been called with. And at this stage, I don't know what it will be, because in the first field, it will be Bruno. In the second one, it will be full-time. So if you, like me, you are lazy, which is I'm lazy, you can do the following. You can open your terminal, run the test, and then the test will fail for you, and it will say it was expected to receive lazy true, but in reality it received this much in the onSubmit function. And so we can go ahead, copy that expected, and put it over there, and our first test will be done. So as you can see, I can now copy this little bit, just make sure that it makes sense what's there, don't just blindly copy what's there, but the city was Villarreal, so it's very good. The description is hello, which is good. The first name, it was Bruno. The job, it was the full-time. Yes, I am a millionaire, and now the money is $1 million. So this first test is now finalized. I will ask you something. To not bother you with refactoring all these tests, I will go ahead and do what I did to this get first name to all of those fields, and I will show you how it looks. If you want, that's your homework before we start the second test. And this is how our code looks like after refactoring. And I think you will agree with me if I say that now our first step looks much easier to understand. On the line 16, we have the user will type on the first name Bruno. Then the user will select, and the select is a drop-down, on the job situation, full-time. The user will type on the city, Villarreal, and the user will click on the millionaire checkbox, and then click on the next button. So the first step is much easier to understand. The same applies to our second and to our third step. Then at the end, we have what we had before. We are waiting for our onSubmit to have been called with the expected values. And I'm also calling this to have been called one time, because if our onSubmit was called 2 or 3 times, most often than not, we have some kind of bug into our form. I'm not saying you have a bug if it is called 2 times, but it's a good smell for you to go and investigate a bit more. All right? Now, this is how all those helpers look like, and they are at the bottom of your file, so they don't bother you, and every time you create a new test, you have these helpers to help you out. Now, we are ready to start to test these has3 required fields on the first step. Let's just go over here, click on Next, and I can already copy this text. Just one small note. In this test or in this demo, I'm using formik, and the validations in formik, they are asynchronous. So when I click Next, they need a little bit of time to appear on the field, and that will have a small impact into our tests. If you are using React Hook form, I will show you what you don't need to do, okay? So let me show you what I mean. I will do the following. I will click on the Next button, and now if you are using React Hook form, you just need to do the following. Expect screen get by text, and you will type to be required to be in the document, right? This is what you need to do if you are using React Hook form. If you are using formik like I am, we need to do this. And I will use a wait for just because of the code we will need in a second, right? So this is the way it needs to be in order to work with formik, all right? Now, what do we need to do in order to make this a little bit better in terms of semantic? Well, there is helpers in React testing library JSDOM that we don't need to grab the text like this. We can go over here and search for toHaveErrorMessage. And this toHaveErrorMessage will look a little bit better when we do our tests, because we need to do expect, we will put our input field or our dropdown, and then we just say toHaveErrorMessage. Because what we are doing in our tests at the moment, this text can be anywhere into our document. So for users using, for example, a screen reader, we are probably not helping them that much, right? So let me just show you what you need to do. In your input field, you need to have an ARIA error message when you have an error, and the ID of your error message. So in this case, we have this ARIA error message with the message ID, and then in the span where we have the error, we have that message ID. Also, don't forget to put that ARIA invalid equals to true. By default, Material UI, which is the library I'm using, already sets up this ARIA invalid to be true, but doesn't set this ARIA error message. So if I just go ahead and replace what we have by the following, it will fail in my example, but I will fix it for us. So if we do get first name to have error message, right? This is much nicer to read in terms of code, but my test for now, it will fail. So let me show you how you can fix that if you are using Material UI. If not, the next 30 seconds for you are a bit of a waste of time, right? But let me just go to the first field, and I will put this custom text field with error message, and I will show you that component in a little bit. So let me just go over here. I replaced all my fields by that one, and I just need to do one last thing for our dropdown, because our dropdown at the moment is not using that error message ID, which will be the job error, and I just need to copy this ID to be the job error, right? So our dropdown is also fixed. And now we just need to, if you are using Material UI, if not, you need something very similar, but is not then calling the text field from Material UI, right? You just need to type this ARIA error message. If you have error, right, then you will type the props field name with the helper test, which is the default name for the helper texts of Material UI, and then it will work for us. So if I now run that test again. I think I saved the file. Let me just double check that I saved the file. I think I did. And now this test will run for us. Now, with that test running for us, we can just go ahead, copy the other two error messages. We have get city, and we can copy our city message. So let me just go to the city and copy our city message. So copy our city message, and I saw that we have some kind of bug over here. I forgot to remove one of the components. Good job, Bruno. So let me just go ahead and see, not that one, this one. Good job, Bruno. And now if I run, I will have already two validated, and then I need also to grab our dropdown, which we don't have helpers yet. So I will just copy this and do a function get select job situation. Some people like to call it dropdown instead of select. Feel free to change to be called dropdown. And now I can do one more refactor over here to be this bit. And now we have that one over there. And as you can see, our test is passing. So I just need to go over here and also do expect our job situation to have error message. And I need to copy the error message because I did that 2 or 3 days ago and I don't remember the error message anymore. So now with that, we have already tests passing for our main errors. And if you want to leave the video at this point, you already have how to handle errors the proper way, and you already have a slightly complex test over here where we are testing 5 fields in a step, something that is dependent on those, and it's quite nice. Now, the test that I'm going to do will be focused on our city, because the city is the one where we have the 8 characters as the minimum and the max characters as 11. So I will show you how I usually test those things. So I will say describe city field, right? And I just create a describe so I know exactly all the tests I'm doing just for the city, and then all the tests I'm doing, for example, for the drop down and so forth, right? So now over here, I will just do shows error when city has less than 8 chars. Okay, and now we just need to roughly do something very, very similar to what we already did in the past. If you don't want to do anything special, you can just go over there, copy this bit, right? And now you have 2 options for the errors to appear. You can click tab or you can click on the next button. If you come over here and refresh, when I'm doing, for example, hello, I can click next, or I can click in hello and I can click tab and my error will appear, right? So whichever you prefer to use, for now, I will use the tab. So I'm going away. So it's a focus out this way. And so we test both ways. It doesn't matter, but we test it both ways. And now we can go ahead and do something very similar to what we already did. Once again, if you are using a React hook form, you can put the line 63 alone without this wait for, okay? So I will just, oops, not over there, over here. I will do asynchronous over there. And I just need to copy the error because once again, I don't remember the errors I created yesterday or 2 days ago. I think it was 2 days ago. Now I can put those 8 characters. And as you may imagine, the test for the 11 characters will be very, very similar. So if we have as more than 11 characters, and this one needs to be only Villa, so 4 characters is less, and I will just do this, which is much more than 11, and I will just also copy the error message from when we have more than 11. So I can copy this one, and now you have all the validations for the 11 characters as well. I will just run this for us. So we have now 4 tests that hopefully are all running correctly. And the last thing I want to show you is regarding the cross-step validation for our checkbox and the money field, right? So let me just create something over here, and we have an error, which is good and bad. You will see me debugging a little bit. So let's see what we have. So it's saying that the area invalid to be true, but it is false. So it's not invalid, which is very interesting. So let's see how many tests failed. If it failed 1 or 2 tests, it failed 2 tests. Okay, fair enough. So we typed on the city, right? Makes sense. I'm so stupid and I'm sorry. I have get first name instead of get city. I'm sorry, guys and girls. I made a mistake. So I was typing on the city, but I was looking for the first name field. Pardon me. So now that we have that one, we can now go to the cross-step validation, which is the one that it's trickiest, but you will see it's not hard at all. After you see the solution, it's not hard. And you can call it, for example, describe, and now over here, I will call money field, right? And in order for us to go to the money field, we already test the money field with the checkbox and 1 million. So it's working in that situation. So we will check the checkbox and test that if we have, for example, only 100, we will have the error message. So let's go ahead, do something very similar to what we did over here, because we need to fill all the fields in the first step. So you can copy that bit, and if you want, in the future, and you see yourself going too many times to the second field, you can grab all of these from line 16 to line 20 and create a function saying create validated fields on first step or something like that. So you avoid doing this all the time, because copy pasting this everywhere, it works, but it doesn't help much probably to the readability of your components. And even worse, if in the future we have one more field, you will have a ton of tests failing because of one more field that should be required. And so if you are copy pasting it everywhere, you will have a ton of tests failing. If you have a function, once again, you change it in one place and all the tests go back to green. All right. But for now, I will copy these. If you have doubts on how to do it, feel free to reach me out in the comments or on Twitter or LinkedIn, and I will answer your questions, okay? So I will just go over here and say it, and I will think about a better message in a second. Think in a sec about a better message, because now I'm focused on the test itself. And so what we need to do over here is just await, and now I will just say, for example, 100. I will click on the next button, and then I will expect our get money. So I will expect our get money to have an error message. All right. And that error message that I am expecting it to have is the following. Let me go over here, fill it with Bruno. The job situation can be part-time. The city can be, again, Vila Real, even with a typo. Good enough. And now I will put just 100, click next, and I can copy this error message. So I will go over here, type this error message, and now I just need to say that this is also asynchronous. And now this should be good to go. I will click on that one. And if this test passes, I really think you have most of what you need for your day-to-day testing, right? Just be careful when you create those abstractions. They will help you quite a lot. But there is one thing that I need to say before we finalize the video, and is probably the biggest tip of this video, is what you should test now is all the fields that you have the way I tested city. Okay, because let me just show you something. If you want to then test the fields all together, for example, this one now is a required field and has an error. Part-time is okay. If Vila Real has more than 11, now I have this case scenario. If now I change this to be less than 8, I have another case scenario. So if you are starting to try to put all the possible permutations of first name with city and job situation, you will end up with like 16 or 20 possible use cases. and we only have 3 fields over here. If you then have, let's say, 10 fields, this starts to grow exponentially. So be very, very careful with your time. And even yesterday, I gave this example to one colleague in my company. When you are creating tests, your time is finite. So you don't have infinite amount of time. Your time is finite, and you should test everything you can, of course, but it's like a computer. When you buy a computer, you buy a computer with 16 or 32 gigs of RAM, but there are computers with 1 terabyte of RAM or more, but they cost like 50,000 pounds. And you don't buy those very expensive ones because you don't need to. Or the ratio of money you spend and the benefit you get is not worth it. The same will apply to tests. There is a moment in time where adding more tests just for the sake of adding more tests will not benefit you in much way. Okay? So be very, very careful with the way that you add tests. Be proactive and think about the money. Every second is money, right? So think very, very carefully. And if you want, as I said before, reach out to me on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, and ask me what I will do. And I have all the pleasure to spend 10, 15 minutes chatting with you about any question you might have with this subject. All right. So with that being said, I really, really hope you enjoyed the video, like the video, and I see you in the next one. Bye-bye.